So here's a question for you. If your property manager told you your HOA is compliant with California Reserve Study requirements, would you actually believe them? Because I'm guessing most board members would. I mean, that's literally what you're paying them for, right? To handle this type of stuff so you don't have to. But here's the thing, and this is what I want you to really think about while we're going through this. A large portion of associations throughout the country that I've worked with that thought they were compliant weren't. And many didn't even find out until it became a problem or it was just this big expensive thing to correct. So today I'm going to walk you through exactly what California law requires, why it matters to your community, and most importantly, why relying or trusting on someone else to handle everything might be costing you tens of thousands of dollars that you didn't even realize that you had yet. So let's jump into this. Quick heads up though, if you're watching this from outside of California, you might be thinking that this doesn't apply to you, but stick around. While the specific California laws I'm going to walk you through are state specific, the principles behind reserve study management apply everywhere. In fact, reserve study laws vary widely across the United States. Some states have strict requirements like California, other states have very minimal rules. And some states have basically nothing on the books that even talk about it. But regardless of where you are, the financial principles are the same. Communities with strong reserve planning avoid special assessments and maintain property values. And communities without it, they don't. So if you're in Florida or Texas or Wyoming or anywhere else, pay attention because what I'm about to show you is how this should be done even if your state doesn't legally require it. Okay, so California law is actually pretty straightforward here, and I want to make sure that you understand it crystal clear because it really is the foundation for everything we're talking about. Every HOA and condo association in California is required to complete a full professional reserve study at least once every 3 years. Once every 3 years, that's it. This is your baseline requirement. But here's where most boards kind of trip up about this. You also need to do an annual review and an update. Not a full new study, but a real update to that reserve study every single year as part of your annual budget report. Now, what goes into this study? Pretty much anything that keeps your building standing, watertight, or functioning. We're talking about roofs, waterproofing, plumbing, electrical systems, elevators, pavement, any form of a structural foundation. It's really the big stuff that costs real money when it fails. And if you've got balcony or decks, that's where Senate Bill 326 comes in, and this is important. SB 326 added balcony and deck inspection requirements that kicked in on January 1st, 2025. A licensed structural engineer has to inspect those every 9 years. Those inspection results feed directly into your reserve study. So why does California even have these rules? Well, because they learned this the hard way. The 2015 Berkeley balcony collapse, try saying that 3 times fast. The Berkeley balcony collapse, 6 people died in this, and it happened because maintenance got deferred and water got into people's decking and properties and stuff, and structural integrity failed. California said never again, and these requirements are really how they prove it. So when you do a reserve study and an annual updates, you're not just checking a box on some paperwork. This isn't just red tape bureaucracy. You're following a law that exists because people died. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Okay, so why do I personally care about this? Why can't my property manager just handle it? That's a fair question, but let me tell you why. First, the obvious one, legal liability. If your board isn't maintaining proper reserve studies and annual updates, you are exposed. Insurance companies can deny claims, your community can face penalties, and that's not just theoretical, that stuff actually happens. But honestly, the bigger consequence is what happens to your community financially. When reserves aren't properly funded and tracked, special assessments follow. And I mean sudden special assessments, thousands of dollars per unit, sometimes tens of thousands. And that really is the moment that board members start getting angry emails and Homeowners put the community on blast on Facebook groups. And here's the real brutal part. Properties with strong reserve funding maintain up to 12% higher market value than those with underfunded reserves. So we're not just talking about a compliance issue, we're talking about your neighbor's equity, we're talking about attracting new buyers, we're talking about the financial health of the entire community. And when a reserve study isn't actively being managed, when it's just sitting on a PDF somewhere, that funding plan doesn't actually happen. Projects slip, maintenance gets deferred, and suddenly you're 5 years behind on updates. So this brings us to the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. Most boards think, I have a property manager, what could go wrong? They're handling it all. We're fine, right? But here's what I've seen happen in community after community, and these are communities that have been under professional management for decades. They still miss deadlines. They still have problems. They still end up with surprise special assessments. They still have reserves that are dramatically underfunded. Why? Because, property managers are stretched thin. They're managing dozens of communities. They're dealing with tenant complaints and maintenance emergencies and collection issues. So your reserve study isn't really top of their priority. It should be, but it's not. And their systems, most of them are really outdated. They're still using spreadsheets. They're still looking through those PDFs and hoping to catch something. They're still kind of sending themselves email reminders that get lost. There's really no accountability built in and no automated tracking, no red flags that pop up when something is about to be missed. So here's the real problem. When something goes wrong with reserves, whose fault is it? The property manager says, we sent you the report. The board says, we didn't know we were supposed to be acting on it. And meanwhile, your community's financial health keeps deteriorating. In California, for a common interest development of which condos and HOAs fall under, with the Davis-Stirling Common Interest Development Act, the who is liable question when a reserve study is not done or reserves are underfunded is kind of a bit of a complex thing to look at. The short version of the answer is this. The board of directors and the association carry primary legal responsibility, but a property manager can have some liability depending on what the contract states and whether or not they acted in negligence. Now, there's a lot of nuance that I can't get into here, but the short of it is this. The board holds the primary responsibility. And look, I'm not saying that property managers are trying to rip you off. Most of them really aren't. They're just, they're trying to do the best they can, but they're spread thin and they're really not incentivized to make your reserve study their main priority. They get paid the same whether your reserves are managed perfectly or they're a complete mess. So what do you do about it? Well, that's a good question, but bottom line is you need to take control yourself. And I know that sounds intimidating. Reserve studies sound very complicated, and they can be. I'm not gonna lie to you, they can be. But here's the truth. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to have the right tools. When you have a system that tracks deadlines automatically, keeps your reserve data organized and accessible, and shows you exactly what's coming up and when, lets you forecast funding scenarios in real time, and connects your reserves to your actual budget, you suddenly have clarity, right? A dynamic tool that gives you a plan, and that changes everything. Instead of relying on a property manager to remember, you remember, the system does it, right? The system, the AI has all of this stuff tracked for you. So instead of hoping that someone's staying on top of it, you can see it. And instead of discovering problems during a crisis, you're really preventing them years in advance. Now again, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't trust your property manager. This is just about not needing to trust one person with something this important. It's about having your own visibility as a board. You are in control. Because here's what happens when a board is actively engaged with its reserve data. Special assessments become rare. Property values stay strong. Homeowners see a board that has its act together. and the board saves their community thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary costs. Listen, if you're ready to take control of your reserves instead of hoping that your property manager has it handled, there's a platform built exactly for this. Solium is the only all-in-one management tool that has reserve study management built in for boards who want to move beyond spreadsheets and PDFs. It integrates your reserve data, your budget, and your compliance deadlines into one place. You get real-time visibility, it automates your reminders, it gives you scenario planning, everything a modern board needs to actively manage reserves instead of just report on them. So let me ask you what might seem like a ridiculous question. If your community faced $1 million special assessment tomorrow because of some overlooked problem, would you still say that your manager's got it handled? Listen, you don't need another spreadsheet. You need control, you need visibility, you need certainty, and that's what Solium gives you. Boards that wait react, and boards that act lead. So schedule a demo and see how Solium keeps your community compliant, funded, and future-proof without depending on anyone else to remember. Your community's long-term health is far too important to leave this to chance, and honestly, the right tools make this easy. So let's get your community protected. Let's set you up for success.